executive
Yes,
order
ma'am.
first before I do the roll call? Okay.
Either way, you can do the roll call and then the motion.
Okay, I will do as Councilmember Mendez did and ask people to raise your hand if you indicate your presence, and I'll read the motion while Mr. Cooper is counting who's here. So the motion is pursuant to Governor Lee's Executive Order number 16 regarding electronic meetings as extended by Executive Orders 34 and 51, I make a motion that this committee meeting constitutes essential business of Metro Council and the meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion is recommended. We have two items to consider. First is Resolution RS 2020-406, sponsors Allen and Mendez. This authorizes the Metro government.
Councilmember, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but could you go ahead? We need to do the roll call before
Yes.
we proceed.
Okay. Has everyone who is on the committee raised your hand? I see Councilmember Mendez.
I have Mendez, Sledge, Toombs, Sepulveda, Parker, Suara, and Allen.
Thank you.
Hauser has her hand up too.
And Hauser. Okay, duly noted. And hopefully Councilmember Welch will join us or find us later. Thank you for that reminder, Mr. Cooper. So back to Resolution RS 2020-406, which authorizes the mayor to submit substantial amendment number 3 to the 2018 through 2023 consolidated plan and the Nashville Davidson County CARES Act substantial amendment to the 2019-2020 annual action plan for the housing and community development to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. For those who were not in planning, if he is still on the call, I will ask Matt Wiltshire to give us a very brief explanation of what this resolution does. Matt, are you still there? There is a Matt of some name.
I am. I
Here you are.
hope everyone can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Great. So this bill actually authorizes the mayor to submit an amendment to our annual action plan. Those of you who are familiar with MDHA and the way that we administer funds, there's a 5-year plan, and then there are annual plans that lay out the criteria for how we can expend various funds. The initial tranche of CARES Act funding that MDHA received through the mayor's office, actually, but received to administer was essentially 60% of our annual appropriation for these community development funds. It's approximately $3.1 million of community CDBG funding. I think it's about $1.5 million of ESG funding and smaller amounts of housing opportunity for persons with AIDS. So we're amending our action plan, annual action plan, to enable the expenditure of these funds. The funding for CDBG is to provide rent and mortgage assistance for low and moderate income individuals. And there's funding for ESG, which is emergency solutions grants for individuals experiencing homelessness. And so this plan there was a community needs assessment that Amel Alexander and our community development team and his team performed to assess community needs and then roll out a plan for the expenditure of this initial tranche of funding. That's detailed in more specificity in the attachment to this legislation. But generally, we're following HUD rules, regulations, and guidelines about the framework for how we expend these funds. And this bill is another step in that process. I'm happy to answer more details, or if Amel can click in here to have Amel answer any additional questions that you may have about the specifics.
Great, thank you for that explanation. You see one hand raised, Councilmember House.
Yes, I have a question in regards, and this just may or may not be where it's going to be addressed, but there are obviously more individuals that are going to be needing rent assistance. And is this going to expand the number of individuals that we're going to be able to give vouchers to? Because I know there's been a waiting list for vouchers. Can you address that?
Yeah, so vouchers is actually a separate question, and I'm happy to get into that. But in short, what MDHA receives annually from HUD is a dollar amount, and we are allocated approximately $54 million to run our Section 8 voucher program. And we issue vouchers, and once someone has a voucher, they have that voucher so long as they continue to meet the criteria. What has happened as many individuals have been laid off from work is that individuals continue to pay 30% of their income for their apartment, which, as you know, under Section 8, they receive a voucher, they go to a private landlord, the landlord agrees to federally mandated rents, and then they pay 30%, the voucher covers the balance. As individuals have been laid off or received reduced hours, their 30% share has gone down, and so the value of the voucher has gone up, and we are actually now significantly over the amount of funding authorization we have from HUD. We're in conversations with them about that, but yes, there is right now a hold on issuing additional vouchers to new individuals because we, essentially MDHA, really administering HUD funds, is having to cover a greater share of those rents for those individuals with vouchers. So this funding is separate from that. The voucher funding is a separate issue. We're covering that for those individuals who have vouchers. This funding is a different sort of pot of money, but will for individuals who make 80% or less of area median income will be eligible for 3 months of rent or mortgage assistance under various criteria that are still being finalized and will be likely administered by a third party, not by MDHA directly, but will actually be able to help other people. If you have a voucher, you're already getting your rent covered effectively through the voucher. So really, this is intended primarily to help other individuals who may not have a voucher, may meet criteria, but don't have that assistance to help cover the rent.
Thanks for that clarification. Councilmember Hauser, any other questions? Okay. Seeing no other questions in the queue, I believe we're ready to vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Resolution is recommended. Our second and final item is BL 2020-224, as amended by Taylor, Suara, and others. This amends Chapter 1122 of the Metro Code to require landlords to provide notice to tenants prior to the sale of a property. And I will begin with Councilmember Taylor. Councilmember Taylor, you want to move your bill and give us a brief explanation? I see you there. I believe he had indicated he might be running late, so he may not have access to it.
I think he was going to defer this bill.
That is my understanding as well.
Can I speak to something related to this?
Let's see. Okay, so Councilmember, can we get a summary? Then discuss it. Okay.
Is it my turn or is it someone else's turn?
In the absence of Councilmember Taylor, you are recognized.
Okay, I just want to say that in relationship to this issue, I have been talking with an individual who both is a realtor, the Tennessee lawyer, and very much involved in affordable housing, that has agreed to review this bill and give us some suggestions on what would meet the criteria for all the individuals involved. And I think our intent is to announce a public meeting in which we will present that information and take any feedback before, and if Brandon has stepped on, he can speak to this, and then come up with a substitute bill.
Thank you. I think there may be an amendment. Mr. Cooper, is there an amendment in the packet?
There is an amendment. If it's being deferred, then we can just roll the amendment along with that.
Okay. I believe the amendment simply makes this specific, that says specifically this is just for residential, and that the sponsor would like to have that on record. So if someone would like to move the amendment, we can talk about that. I think that would be appropriate. Okay, I heard a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Which I can't tell you which page it is on your packet and drive meeting as well, but it is in your packet and simply adds the word residential to the description of the properties, so it's clear that this does not apply to commercial property. Any other discussion on the amendment?
Yeah, it is.
You recognize?
So, somebody has their mic on. There's a lot of echo on WebEx. I haven't had a chance to comment on this bill yet, and this amendment is a good place for it. As somebody who's a practicing commercial lawyer who cares a lot about affordable housing, I would share that I've been troubled by this from the beginning, as being either difficult to comply with, or that word would get out in the lawyer community that you send a notice immediately after you have a client buy a piece of property, giving notice that one day it might get sold, and try to meet the requirements that way. I think that for clever commercial lawyers, it's going to be hard to achieve the intent of this bill. I mean, I've got an open mind to see where it might go. But from the beginning, this one, wearing my lawyer hat, has been just an invitation to try to find ways around it that wouldn't effectively do what the sponsors wanted to do. So again, I got an open mind about it, but I am curious whether we're ever going to find language that both accomplishes the goal and transactions. I don't know whose mic that's impossible.
Can everyone check the mic,
I am glad to see it go to just residential, because that makes it a little bit easier, but it's still, I've got questions about this one.
Thank you. I appreciate that comment. Councilmember Suara.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add that as a co-sponsor, I've been talking to the Greater Nashville Realtors as well, and they have some language they want to add. I don't think it's bad in its entirety. I think it's salvageable. That's what I'm learning, and they want us to change some of the language, and I think that's why the sponsor wants to defer it. So I don't know how long you wanted to do it for, but I know that the intent was to defer it for a couple of meetings so that we can have the opportunity to talk to everyone and get the input. The person that I'm talking to, on one hand, understands the issues as it relates to the tenant, with the people that we're trying to protect, but the landlords are our constituent as well. So trying to find a good balance that would not have, we have people from NOAA talking about people that have been put out because somebody sold their house under them. When you have somebody that's been renting for 10 years and has been had to leave with such a short notice and have to change school and everything, that is the whole point of the bill. And so, but we do want to make it in such a way that it works for everybody. So there is conversation, the Greater Nashville Realtor is involved. There's some other people that are involved, and so getting that deferral would allow us to be able to do whatever we need to do next.
Thank you. It sounds like we're in agreement on that. Are we comfortable passing the amendment as I believe the sponsor would like, or do we want to wait on that?
Councilmember, this is John Cooper. I just want to point out it's actually a substitute, and it does a couple things. It's broader than just applying to residential property. It also has a timeline of 5 days for notifying within a binding sale agreement of the closing date. So it is a substitute. I think it was to consolidate a couple of amendments so that you didn't have one amendment fighting with another one. Hannah, she can probably address that better.
Hello, this is Councilman Taylor. I'm here.
You're recognized.
All right, thank you. So this is very simply a housekeeping substitute. So when the amendments, there were 2 amendments that were added to this bill, and they were added on top of the bill as opposed to changing the language within the bill. And those amendments were to change language, and Councilmember Hauser's bill was to add language into the bill. And so, so this would actually, the substitute would write those changes, and that would be able to help us move forward with this bill with the correct amendments added to the bill.
And Councilmember Taylor, can you comment a little on the amount of time you were thinking you would want to defer this? We were not sure about that.
Yes, thank you. I would like to probably defer this. I'm thinking right now until the first week in September.
Okay, so we'd have some time on that. I'm slightly out of order. We should vote on the amendment, but just helpful to have the big picture. So we now have the substitute, not amendment, the substitute explained to us. And are there any more questions on the substitute? Councilmember Mendez, is your hand raised from earlier, or would you like to speak again? Or Councilmember Hauser?
Okay, I have a question on how
on the substitute,
proceed with this bill and the public hearing that we wanted, where we had the input from the realtors and, as I said, the individual that I was wanting to bring to the table, who had the affordable housing leaders' perspective and realtor and lawyers' perspective. Would be best to have that just make it an affordable housing meeting where we could discuss all this and then come up with a solution at the end of that meeting and how we wanted it to work, rather than each of us trying to jump in and sort of disconnected come up with a bill.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that a affordable housing committee meeting, or if Councilmember King wants to just handle it as a committee meeting with him being in charge, I think either one of those would be a good forum to have that type of discussion. And that between the 2 of us, we are committed to making that happen. So I think the plan here is to have an open committee meeting, or an open meeting about this, where the community would be allowed to participate and where stakeholders could provide input. Councilmember Taylor, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is that your understanding?
That's correct. Yes. So we could work through it as a committee, as well as a few stakeholders, from realtors to also to the Greater Nashville Apartment Association, as well as the individuals from NOAA and a few other folks that are in support of this bill. So we could all kind of work together. We can call a special meeting to do so. There's some information that I am waiting on. And guys, I apologize. This was a bill as a new council member, I didn't understand how extremely busy June would be, especially this year. And I thought I would have a lot more time to dedicate, but necessarily I didn't. So I want to make sure that we are doing the right things, and that we can add some support and some protection for those tenants. And that this bill is something that we can move forward with in the future. And I think there's a little more work that I can do and that we can do as a committee to make sure that we present the best ordinance possible to the body.
Thank you. So that being said, we have a substitute before us. If we feel that substitute will be what we want to be working on when we come back to work on it, then I would recommend voting for that substitute. So that being said, any other discussion on the substitute? Seeing no new hands, all those in favor of the substitute, please say aye.
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 Okay, substitute is recommended. Councilmember Taylor, do you want to move your bill as substituted? Or do you want to move to defer your bill as substituted?
Yes, I would like to move to defer the bill to the first meeting of September.
Meeting of September. And you and I will work together to have workshop, committee meeting, whatever we want to call it, so that we can do some work. Okay, so it has been moved to defer to the first meeting in September. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing no hands in the queue, all those in favor of a deferral to the first meeting in September, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
That was a late eye, I'm thinking. Okay. Deferral is recommended. Is there any other business that needs to come before the committee? Seeing no hands, I will turn this meeting now over to Councilmember Angie Henderson so she can begin Public Works. Thank you for sticking with us.
All right, just